Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about lists. And lists, if you're familiar with programming or you took me for 188, you'll know that you'll know about arrays. And arrays are very similar to lists. So at first you can just merely think of those in that way. So in fact, you could almost say lists, let's say tilde equals arrays. Because really what they do is take data, so long, we'll call it, well, I don't even want to say long, but similar data type storage. So what does that mean? Well, I could say x is equal to 5, y is equal to 5, z is equal to 5, or z is equal to 7, or, so I could so I have an x and a y and a z variable. But if you look at them, they're all numbers. In fact, we could all say they're ints. Well, if they're all related, so in other words, let's say we take an age. So we could say age 1 is 13, age 2 is 27, age 3 is 41, age 5 is 12, age 6, and on and on and on. We could create all these individual variables, but why do that when they're all essentially ages and we can store them in one similar variable under under the same name? So what we prefer to do in programming is use a list or a array. Now, can you use arrays in Python? Yes, you definitely can. But lists, I find, get used a little bit, maybe a little bit more. So let's go ahead and start one off. So if you took any of my other classes, I usually talk about like DVDs, like movies. What can you do? Because if you think about it, when you store a DVD, you have to put it in a slot. And if you try to put a VHS in that slot, if you still have VHSs, it won't fit, right? And if you try to fit a hard drive in there, it's not going to fit because these are all specific size and dimension. Well, just the same way with lists. I mean, you can't stick a float and an integer in the same list. You can only do all floats or all ints. So kind of to keep that mentality. In fact, I'm just going to create, I'll call it the DVD, if you guys are still using DVDs. It's a little hard to do when you talk about like DVRs and stuff like that. But pick whatever you want, whatever you store and like that are similar in the same piece. And the simplest way is to do this. Create a square bracket, left square bracket, right, and now all of a sudden you have a list. And let's put some stuff in there. And we'll just use good old-fashioned I suppose I should capitalize this. Since these are, so we're going to put good old-fashioned strings in here. And remember, since we're using Python, we don't have to worry about double strokes, double apostrophe or single quotes. I'm mixing up my metaphor there, but so single quotes or double quotes doesn't matter. And but again, we are going to stick with a convention. So if I say that, if I use single quotes first, I'm going to use single quotes second, and on and on. And as you can, let's look at the structure now. So we say DVD, and we don't actually have to call it a list. If you call it an array, you actually have to put the word array in there. But because of these square brackets, it will automatically turn it into a list. And then within the list, we have three things, but to note, they're going to be separated by commas. That's imperative. If I took those out, it'll try to treat it as one space. Now I put three pieces into it. If you've ever worked with arrays before, you know you have to tell that array how many spaces to reserve. Lists don't have it, so they work like a dynamic array, which means we can resize it, meaning I can add to this DVD array, and I can also shrink this DVD array. So in other words, I can take off Adventures 2. And I think, well, we'll play with that a little bit when we get into Visual Studio. But the big thing what I want you to know is always use these guys. And then separate with commas. Let's see what else we can say about this. Oh, and they're going to start at 0. Now, what does that mean? Well, now you got to go back to your 188 or your previous knowledge, is that everything has an index number in an array. Likewise, in a list, this is true as well. This has an index number. So this is DVD spot 0. So if I were to say DVD, well, I don't want to confuse you yet. Yeah, or ask, say, what? Let's do it that way. Say, what is DVD 1? Question mark. Now, this is pseudocode. This is not real code. You can put this into Python. But if we were to ask the computer, and the computer knew what it knew how to talk back, we could say, what is DVD 1? Well, you know, to the person who's never used computer science before, they'd say Citizen Kane. But no, Citizen Kane would be DVD 0. If it was DVD 1, it actually goes here. So this starts off at 0, 1, 2. A lot of programming languages do this. It's like to start off at 0. Most, and then, you know, there's some scripting languages that start at 1, but the general practice is 0. So it's not a bad thing to do that, because if you ever mix and match, which we're going to try to do at the end of the semester, you know, codes with other codes, it might be nice to have a standard so that your 0 goes into another 0 in another part of the code, which may be written in C++ or something like that. Okay, well, so let's actually have some fun with this. And let's go ahead and get into Visual Studio. Bring that up, pause the tape if you have to, and then when you're back, get back, let's do this. I'm going to do New Project. And I'm just going to call this one Lists. It loves putting it in here, but I'm going to have to change that path at some point. So we're ready to go. Python application is fine. Oh, I actually have Pygame in there. Cool. And I'm going to click OK. And of course you get this blank thing. You might get the hello world again. But believe it or not, since I typed it like this, this should be of good formatting. So if I go ahead and I do a control paste, let's see if it's happy with this. So far so good. I can do a quick run. Alright, so it runs. It just doesn't do anything, right? Because we didn't print out anything, or we didn't tell it to go anywhere. We will, but give it a couple seconds. And in fact, make sure you save this for next one, because I'm going to break this up. I see I'm already up to about 9.5 minutes. I am going to wait for that. So if I were to type in print DVD, actually let's just do this and then we'll move on. We'll stop and we'll go to the next piece. And I hit play, it says it's going to give me an error. And why? We know print works, right? We've used that before, but it says missing parentheses in call to print. Oh, well, okay, good. Let's type that up. And then you might think, well, should I put in the quotations? No, because DVD is a variable. So we should be fine here. Let's go ahead and hit it again. And as you can see, it spits out the entire one. Now, we don't have to spit out the entire one. I could actually just do spit out 0 for me. And see, notice the difference though. When I printed out DVD, it gave me everything, quotations and all. But now it's just giving me the piece, which is probably the more correct way, meaning that we put quotes around that because we wanted it to be exactly correct, right? Does that make sense? So in other words, I needed the C to be in the first slot, the I to be in the second slot, so on all the way down to the E. But once it's in there, it's a variable, and we want to be able to change it. The quotes aren't part of the variable. The quotes just tell it to make sure you put this in correctly. That's we'll talk about for statements in the next video probably, which will allow you to do that. But for right now, let's just do everything that we know. Now, the nice thing about Python is it gives you a lot of cool access. So if I do DVD again, and I put in the term -1. Now, this might throw some programming languages because a -1 doesn't exist. Remember, it's just 0 for Citizen Kane, 1 for Office Space, and 2 for Adventures. The -1 would be before Citizen Kane according to logic. But to Python, what this means is that you go all the way to the end and then you go back 1. So it should grab Adventures 2 here. And let's go ahead, and sure enough it does. See Citizen Kane Adventures. Let's go ahead and remember our comments. We'll comment out the first print line so we can just see that -1. But let's do a -2 this time. And go ahead and hit the play button. And notice it says Office Space because it goes to here. This is -1. This is -2. Citizen Kane will be -3. Now, for a three-piece list, it's not a big deal. But when you have a list of 500 things, you might not want to access this. And going to the -1 space, meaning the very last element in this list, is incredibly useful because remember, these things can resize themselves. This doesn't have to stay as 3 pieces. So this can actually grow out into 74 pieces, and then you don't want to necessarily have to keep track of, oh, how many elements are in it right now? Is it 72 or is it 71 or is it 58? I can't remember. I haven't been keeping track. Maybe I should create a variable in order to figure that out. No, don't worry about it. You just use the negatives and then you get straight to the bottom. So it allows us to be a little bit more lazy, which okay, I'm down with that. I don't know if you are, but anything that makes my life easier, I like. So I'm going to say that's a good thing, and just keep it in your toolbox. Remember it for when you need it, and don't forget to come back to the second part of this list talk.